Don't make these 7 scary tourist mistakes in Europe in 2025. From getting stranded in an Italian town to panhandling while traveling to some scary scams that are still going on in 2025 that will ruin your trip. These are the only mistakes that you need to avoid when visiting Europe this year. The good news is, most of these mistakes can be fixed with a little bit of preparation before your trip. Hey there, Jen and Josh from the channel. We have been living in Europe for over 8 years, and we are here to help you avoid all of those tourist traps that are still going strong here in Europe. And this year, we're going to start off with a bang and share with you 7 mistakes that are going to ruin your trip if you don't know about them before traveling to Europe. Mistake number 1 is something that happened to us last month in early January 2025. We were traveling through northern Italy and we fell victim to what is called a smart scam. This is where a scammer impersonates someone else, normally authority figures like a police officer or even a tour guide. This guy was actually wearing a fake uniform of a French policeman, and he stopped us because he said that our hotel was apparently in a restricted zone. We didn't really speak much French at the time, so unfortunately, we kind of fell victim to this and ended up paying a hefty fine that wasn't actually necessary. This is happening a lot now, especially in popular tourist areas throughout Italy, France, Spain, and even Portugal. You might even see people dressed like airline staff trying to check your ticket, or even a priest approaching you asking for money for the church. If you notice anyone approaching you who doesn't look like they should be there, just run away. It's best to be safe than sorry and not end up getting scammed by a pickpocket or paying fines that aren't real. Number 2 is a mistake that is so common, and yet so many tourists fall for it. We've seen it happen to Americans, Australians, Chinese tourists, and even Canadians. One of the biggest scams that's still going on in 2025 are free walking tours. Now we have done a whole dedicated video talking about why free walking tours are bad. But in short, these free walking tours are extremely expensive because you are basically expected to tip your guide. Most of the money that you pay goes directly to the guide, and you are also rushed through every single place. They cram in as many tourists as possible into these tours, and you'll never get a chance to go back and take pictures in any of the places that you want. And you also won't learn very much because the guides are often not locals, and they are just trying to rush you from spot to spot, so you give them a big tip at the end. Don't waste your time. Take a regular walking tour with a reputable company and just budget a little bit more for a guide who actually knows what they're talking about. Number 3 is drinking tap water. Tap water is perfectly fine to drink throughout much of Europe, but you need to be careful which country you're in. Countries like France, Germany, Austria, Sweden, Switzerland, and even Italy, you can safely drink tap water. However, in countries like Spain, Portugal, Greece, Croatia, and Turkey, you definitely want to be avoiding tap water. In some countries like Spain, they do add fluoride to their tap water, which is fine to drink. However, you might notice that it has a different taste and smell. Or in other countries like Greece, the tap water can be salty because of the location on the coast and in islands. Or in Croatia, it might not be clean enough and could even make you sick. When in doubt, just stick with bottled water. Number 4 is forgetting that Europe is not the United States. It is not a friendly country. Unfortunately, it's not. People here do not really care if they're nice to you or not. They have things to do. They're rushing around. And if you stop them in the middle of the street to ask a question, they're not going to be happy about it. This is not like the US where people are super friendly and will smile at you. Here, they're just busy. This can happen in countries like the UK, in France, Germany, even in Italy, where people can be very rude sometimes. And the worst part is that people think that Americans are rude because of how they are being treated. So always remember that it's not personal. People just don't have time to chat with you on the street. If you need help, go into a store or a restaurant and ask someone there. They'll be much more than happy to help you out. Number 5 is one that could literally save your life. And it's one of those mistakes that can turn into a very dangerous situation. One of the biggest mistakes that we see tourists making is crossing the street in places where they shouldn't be. For example, this is the Abbey of Cluny, a beautiful place to visit near Lyon, France. And I cannot tell you how many times we have seen tourists crossing the road right here to get a quick picture of the Abbey. But this is a small country road. Cars come whipping around the corner all the time. And we've seen multiple tourists get hit by cars trying to get a picture. So be very careful when you're crossing the street. Wait until you get to a crosswalk or a place where it's safe to cross. And even then, look both ways before you cross. Cars here don't always stop for you. Number 6 is using public transportation the wrong way. Public transportation is incredible throughout Europe. It is very cheap and convenient. But you need to know how to use it. One of the biggest mistakes that we see tourists make is not buying a ticket before boarding the train or the metro. Now, in most cities, you can buy tickets before you board, but if you wait until you're already on the train, you will pay double the price. This happens in places like Paris, Rome, Madrid, Lisbon, Berlin. All of these cities, the ticket machines are only for buying tickets. If you want to validate your ticket or even charge your Easy card, you need to go to the machines that are yellow. Otherwise, if you're caught without a ticket, you will get a fine that can cost up to 100 euros. And last, but certainly not least, one of the biggest mistakes that we see tourists making is staying out too late. Staying out too late can lead to a scary experience. And there's 2 parts to this. First of all, you might get mugged. One of the biggest mistakes that we see tourists making is flashing their cash or their fancy watches or jewelry while out late at night. Be very careful. If you're drunk, you're much more likely to get targeted by a thief. And secondly, you might miss the last train home. Public transportation shuts down pretty early, especially in smaller towns and villages throughout Europe. You need to plan ahead and know what time the last train is running so you don't get stuck somewhere else. Last thing you want to do is spend the night sleeping on a train station. So those are the top 7 mistakes that you absolutely need to avoid when visiting Europe in 2025. Did you find this video helpful? Make sure to follow us for more tips and check out our video on the top 7 scams still going on in Europe in 2025. Safe travels.